Next up, we have Will Anderson, the defensive end slash outside linebacker out of Alabama, who there's probably not a ton to say about that hasn't been said already. One of the premier prospects in this draft, I would say, no question. You look at just the physical intangibles. You have a guy who's 6'3 and a half, 253 pounds, which is very interesting when you consider he was listed at 235 on the Alabama website. That was quite a jump that I didn't necessarily foresee, but I think it's good that he's seemingly already putting on weight to prepare himself for the next level. 21 years old, which is exactly what you're looking for. 4.60 40-yard dash, and that was all he did at either the combine or the pro day. But I think that was enough of a statement to call it there. But really, for him, where his statement came was on the field this past fall, and really the last 2 seasons, if not his entire career at Alabama. You know, I'll just say it right now, he's not my number 1 graded defensive player. In fact, he's number 3. But he's the most productive by far. And he might just be the most productive player in the entire draft on both sides of the ball in that regard. 34 and a half sacks over 3 years. Ridiculous and absurd tackle for loss numbers. And he's the one guy who, to this point, has put it together on the field, all the traits, everything you want. Now, do I think all those traits are going to translate to the next level? And, you know, he's deserving of that number 1 pick. Not quite, but if you took him there, I wouldn't mind, right? Like, he's that good. I just think there's a couple questionable areas of his game, which we'll touch on here in a minute, but very, very good player overall. Top 4 on my big board. And I mean, what is there to say? You put on the tape and he's just dominating people, whether it's 2021 tape, 2022. I didn't watch any 2020 tape, but I imagine it's just as good and just as freaky. And in that regard, as far as where he is particularly freaky, it is the explosiveness and quickness. Now, I could have just played a whole 7-minute video of these clips for you guys with just insane burst, really good snap timing. He's going to fly off the ball. You need to block him, first of all. That's just, I mean, that's a no-no. But really, really impressive. He'll beat you inside. He can beat you around the edge. He can convert the speed to power. Just one of the most explosive and impressive guys in this draft in that regard, and really in any recent draft as well. I mean, there's not much to say about this guy's athleticism. There's him converting it to power. You know, if you give him that runway, he can run through you, but this is what he'd rather do right here. He'd rather work up as if he's going to speed rush you and then just fly inside and show off the burst laterally and beat you there. And he does that very frequently, as you can see. But hey, if you're one of these tackles and you have to kick slide out there in a hurry and maybe open up your hips because you're worried about the speed rush, well, then he's going to hit you back inside, right? And it's going to be bad news for your quarterback. Just an absolute freaky guy in that regard, and that's why he only did the 40 at the at the combine. He didn't really need to do much more. As far as the ability to set edge and anchor, now this is where I think I certainly took some points off of his grade. You know, there are going to be quite a few good clips, and I think he plays heavier than he's listed, which is a positive. But that doesn't mean he's, you know, immune to ever getting moved, right? And immune to giving up contain on the edge. And sometimes he's so eager to make a play and dive out at a guy that's maybe a little bit premature, and then he'll let the offense around him, right? There can sometimes be some of that, but by and large, I thought his ability to anchor for a guy that was listed at 235 might have been playing a little bit heavier. I thought it was rather impressive, and it's not a huge negative by any means, right? There he is taking on a pulling guard. He can do that decently well. Just as far as especially the recognition aspect of it, there you see one of those plays where he kind of gives up the edge, and then you have another puller there. Just solid, but not, I would say, at that next level. And that's maybe where the traits fall short of his. This is certainly an area where didn't have a ton of clips of the flexibility and bend, but it's there, and it's in bunches. You'll just have to take my word for it. I mean, I gave him a 13.5 out of 15, which I have given higher grades in the past. But you could see it just on a rep like that. Like the ability to get low, tighten the arc, fight through contact, it's there. I think the hand usage is another area that maybe is a little bit lacking. Loves that little inside swipe move that you're going to inevitably see and have seen already. But at times it feels like does rush with a little bit without a plan, I should say. But hey, if he gets his hands into your chest, or if he does have a concentrated move that he's going to try and hit, he can do it very quickly and fluidly. So I gave him a solid grade there, but I do think that's one of the areas where his game could be even more refined at the next level. And for a guy who's only 21 years old, it's hard to really hold his hand usage against him, if that makes much sense, because he is so dominant with where he's at already. There's just reps where sometimes, especially against some of these better tackles, you wish you saw a little bit more, kind of like that last one there against Georgia. As far as the block deconstruction is concerned, as a run defender, again, I think this is where things are maybe a little bit more straightforward, right? Rather than the pass rush tool belt where you kind of have to set up your next move with this move, you're playing the chess game back and forth. This is more just fundamental in terms of, hey, I need to have good hand placement in their chest, try and bench press them off, locate the running back with my eyes, and then shed. And I think he does that actually generally well, and I think that partially comes back to the ability to anchor and not get driven off the ball, horribly. But also, he can do it in space. It just really impressive all around. Whether he's lined up with his hand in the dirt, as an outside linebacker, it is what it is. Block rec, I thought, again, was very solid. You can just kind of see the wheels turning. Hey, he recognizes if a blocker's going away, that means someone else is coming. But instead of even engaging with the puller, he realizes I'm quick enough to just get to the QB. You have plays where they're going to run the opposite way, and he recognizes right away, hey, that's a step with his left foot. He's trying to reach me. I'm not going to let him do that. Going to cross his face. Plays like this where he's on the backside, and again, they're going to try and reach him. Not going to let that happen because he's just so quick to sort of have those wheels turning in his head and know what the offense is trying to do to him. As far as the finishing and tackling, again, it's hard to look at someone with those numbers and say anything bad, right? I think it's at times, again, like I said, he can maybe try and go for those tackle attempts a little bit too early, but I'd rather you go for them too early than not at all. Like some other edge rushers we've had in this draft who, you're kind of scratching your head. He's right next to the running back. Why is he not bringing him down? But at times he could get a little bit sloppy and struggle, especially with some of the bigger backs who very well might have outweighed him if he was 235. Probably not, but hey, Roschon's a big old guy now out there in Texas. So solid. Hard to say much negative in this regard. I give him a 4.5 out of 5. A lot of times you can see it there. He's just so quick and so fast and has so much momentum, driving in your direction that he's going to ultimately bring you down and finish it and make the play. You don't have all those tackles for loss and all those sacks without it. Overall, though, as far as Anderson as a prospect, that grade right there, talking through those categories, came out to an 83.75, which is one of the highest grades of anybody in the class. As I mentioned, I really like him as a player. I think he's probably fit out better for a 3-4 outside linebacker role where he doesn't have his hand in the dirt. But hey, he showed it off at Alabama too, where he was stout enough to get it done. Do I expect that to persist at the next level? That's kind of what I was talking about. There are some questions in that regard. I think he would most likely be better off ball, but it really is what it is. If you think he is the most productive guy in the class, and maybe you value just the production itself over maybe some of the traits and some of the the raw strength and ability to defend the run that maybe a Tyree Wilson or Jalen Carter offers, well, Will's going to be your guy maybe regardless of scheme, right? And he's someone that I certainly do expect to be off the board early. If I had to make a prediction for you guys, I don't hear a lot of people necessarily saying it. There has been some discussion about it, but I actually do think Will Anderson goes to Houston at number 2. Obviously, Nick Caserio has been, was a big part of the Patriots organization. Patriots love, Nick Saban and his Alabama players, and you just got DeMeco Ryans as a head coach who not only loves the defensive side of the ball, but he could make a fun little role there for Will Anderson as a flamethrower off the edge, and really make him the face of that Texans defense going forward. So I do think that will be the pick. Do I necessarily think that should be the pick? Well, I think at that point you're somewhat splitting hairs, but to me, again, I would slightly prefer what Jalen Carter, absent of the off-the-field stuff, has to offer, as well as Tyree Wilson just narrowly. So I like Will. Really fun player to watch. Really productive player to watch. If you just want to put on a game and see somebody in the backfield making plays, snap in and snap out, this is really the film to put on. At times, there were maybe questions about, is he just dominating bad competition? There was an element of that, right? Was he just almost stat padding in a way? I could see it, but at the same time, it's not like his numbers were near anybody else's. When we talk about those 17.5 sacks, yesterday when I filmed my video for Tyree Wilson, we were looking at 7s, right? So even if you were stat padding here and there and racking up sacks against lesser competition, the gap is still so large that I don't think it really makes a difference there. Otherwise, yeah, not much to really talk about here with Will. Just solid. I don't really have any other major complaints. I did think at times maybe his motor could wane a little bit. That was another grade that I guess I didn't really touch on in this one. Nor his leverage, which I did think was good, and I gave him a very high grade there. So you kind of put that all together, and as you can see, at 88.36, which is one of the highest grades, not only in this year's class, but even if you compare it to, say, last year's, he would have been my number one defensive player on the board last year as well. So even if I think he's third this year, I think that just goes to show how talented this year's class is, particularly on the defensive front and defensive side of the ball. So with that being said, if you guys did enjoy, make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good, fun YouTube stuff. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying the flood of content here over this draft weekend. But yeah, let me know in the comment section down below what you think of Will. Are you excited if your team got him? Did you get him as an organization that wasn't suspected to get him? Like, for example, I've seen him in some mocks falling as low as Seattle and Detroit. I think that's a little bit of a spicy take, considering he has been the sort of the top dog to an extent for almost 2 years now. If you looked up stuff for the 2023 draft 2 years ago, it was Will Anderson at the top of the board almost the entire time. So that's a little bit interesting to me, and as someone who's a Lions fan, I certainly wouldn't mind Will at 6, but I just don't really think that's a reality. I think the production is going to wow some teams, and it's going to soothe over maybe some of those trait differences between him and the other two top defenders, in my opinion, in Tyree and Jalen. So with that being said, that's all I have for you guys in this one. I'm mic'd up, now I'm mic'ing out. Peace, guys. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.